this tutorial, you'll create some type magic in Adobe InDesign to create a masthead like you see here. This will be great for a running header in something like a magazine or a newsletter. You'll add and format text, convert text to outlines or paths, and use Pathfinder operations to combine shapes. The final masthead can either contain color, like you see in these examples, or even an image, like you see in this example. To start, you'll create a frame that could be almost any size or shape. That frame will show most of the color or image you choose. For this tutorial, you'll start with a rectangle and edit this shape. So select the rectangle frame tool over here in the toolbar. In the design, pressing the Shift key, draw a square that starts up here in the corner of the guides and goes out into the design, about this big. Release the mouse and then the key. Later, you can experiment and try different sizes and shapes, but for now, we're going to make it a triangle. You'll remove one of the points on the rectangle. So select the Direct Selection tool, which lets you select anchor points. Click in a blank area to deselect first. This is important so you can select an individual anchor point. Then move the pointer over the corner point here, and when you see a little box next to the pointer, click to select it. To remove the point, press Delete or Backspace, and you've got a triangle. Now, so you can see the shape a little more easily, you'll fill it with a color. So in the Properties panel on the right, click the Fill color, and choose a lighter color so you can see the text later. Now you'll add some text. So select the Type tool in the toolbar, and draw a text frame about this big. In the frame, in capital letters, type on-site. Then press the Escape key to select the text frame. Now to format the text, you'll choose a thick font and make the text larger. Too thin or small a font, and it's harder to see using the effect we're going for. So to change the font, click on the Font Family menu over here, and either choose a font you have, or to apply an Adobe font, click Find More up here so you can see a list of fonts you can activate and use. Now we need to find the font Rig Solid, so start typing R-I-G to scroll in the font list. Find Rig Solid, medium lines. There it is, I had to scroll a little bit. Then to activate it so you can use it, click the cloud icon here, and click OK. When it's activated, you can choose the font to apply it. Now to make a few more formatting tweaks. Change the font size to 96 point by selecting the font size and typing in 96. Then press Return or Enter. Now the letters need a little more spacing between them to fill the space. So change the tracking to a positive value here. And if the text no longer fits in the frame, you can actually come to the corner of the text frame and double click to fit it around the text. Now with the shape and text ready, you'll make a copy so you can make changes later. That'll make more sense in a minute. Select the Selection tool and drag across the shape and text. Now to drag a copy, press the Option key on macOS or Alt on Windows and drag a copy over here. Release the mouse button and then the key. Now you'll merge the text with this shape, but first you need to convert the text into paths to make them editable. To convert the text to paths, click the text to select it, then choose Type, Create Outlines. Now at this point, it's important to position the text where you want it, because you won't be able to reposition it after you combine it with the shape. That's why you made a copy, so you could both edit the text later or the shape later and try this again. To combine them, drag across the shape and the text outlines. Then choose Object, Pathfinder, Exclude Overlap. That option will remove the text paths that overlap this shape. Now the shape and text outlines are now one object that could either contain a color fill and or an image. You'll insert an image. So choose File, Place. Navigate to an image you have or the image from this tutorial, and click Open. Now you'll fit the image to this shape a little bit better here. So in the Properties panel on the right, click the Fill Frame Proportionally button. If you wanted to, you could double click on the picture and drag it in the frame, but I think it looks pretty good right now. There are a lot of masthead combinations you can try using this method, so why don't you try this again using the copy text and shape, or even explore further to make your own. You could even add this masthead content to a Creative Cloud library you could reuse in other projects.
As you start to add color to your designs, there are a couple of places you can go to access existing swatches. Up in the Control panel, you have convenient pull-downs, or you could go over to the right, click on Swatches, and open up your Swatches panel. If I'd like to make a new swatch, going through the Swatches panel menu, I'll see that there are several types of colors that can be saved as swatches: solid colors, tints, gradients, and mixed inks. I want to create a new solid color, so I'll select New Color Swatch. As I move the color sliders in the dialog, you can see the little square at the left changing its appearance. That's a preview of what the swatch will look like. If I think I might need this swatch in future projects, I'd probably add it to my CC library, but if I don't want to, I can just uncheck that option. I'm actually not planning to save this swatch, so I'll click Cancel. If I select this large pink rectangle to the left, I can modify its color by coming over to the Tools panel and double-clicking the Fill icon. That launches the color picker. Using the vertical hue slider, I can explore the spectrum. I think I'd like to pick a blue. And then in the large color field to the left, I can move my cursor around until I find just the color that I want. If I just click OK, I'd affect the selected frame, but I wouldn't automatically create a new swatch. And although an informal color applied to an object like that works just fine, it's a good idea to always save your colors as swatches. Swatches just make it easier to manage colors in your documents. So I'll choose Add CMYK Swatch. CMYK is used for printing, while RGB is used for on-screen projects, such as social media art. I'm done, so I'll click OK. Notice how this swatch is identified in my Swatches panel. It has a little CMYK flag, and that tells me that it's spec'd in CMYK. So I'll change its name by double-clicking it. I can uncheck Name with Color Value, and then I can type a new name. I think I'll just call it Light Blue. I'm going to apply this new swatch to a frame at the lower right by selecting it and then clicking on the swatch name. Now, one advantage of saving a color as a swatch is that editing the swatch affects every object using that swatch. In the Swatches panel, I'll right-click on the swatch name and choose Swatch Options, and then I'll change the color mix. Now notice that both objects are going to change in response. You can see that because I have Preview checked. There, I think I like that better. I'll click OK. I like that blue, but it's a little bit too bright, I think, so I'm going to create a lighter version of this swatch. That's called a tint. To do that, I have the swatch selected. Up in the top of the Swatches panel, if I knew the exact value that I wanted, I could just type it in the tint field, but I need to experiment. So I'll click the arrow to the right of that field and drag this slider until I get something that I think I like a little bit better. You can see it happening to the frame at the lower right. I think around 50% will probably work. Now to save this as a swatch that I can use in the future. At the bottom of the Swatches panel, I'll just click the new swatch icon. It creates a new swatch named after the original color that it's related to, and it's conveniently showing me the percentage in the name. I think that's really handy. I'm now going to apply that to the other frame at the left so that they match. There, that's much better. Now there's a relationship between the original light blue swatch and the tint swatch that's based on it. If I change the recipe for either one of those, it's going to affect both of them. So for example, if I select the tint and right-click and choose Swatch Options, and I change the mix, I'm going to get rid of the magenta and just leave it as cyan. Notice that you can see that both frames change, and it's also changed my original light blue. Another way to create a swatch is to select an existing swatch and duplicating it. So I'll select my light blue, right-click, and choose Duplicate Swatch. It bases the name of the new swatch on the swatch that it was created from, but of course I can change that. I'll just double-click it, and I'll just make this one green, and I'll drag the sliders to make it green. There we go. By the way, if you duplicate a tint swatch, that also makes a duplicate of its parent color. They travel together. There are other ways, of course, to add swatches to a document. You could pull a swatch out of your CC library or from another InDesign document. You could sample a color with the point of the Color Theme tool or the eyedropper tool. There's really no end to the fun. So now it's your turn. Go out and use these easy techniques to make your own documents much more colorful.
When printing artwork from InDesign CC, it's important to understand the difference between 100% black and rich blacks. In this video, not only will I show you the difference, but I'll also show you a solution for the problem. So I'm working with this InDesign project which contains an image. I want to take a look at this image inside of Photoshop. Notice I have the info panel open, and as I hover over the black space, you can clearly see that this is a rich black based upon the CMYK values in the info panel. I'm going to jot down these values so I can use them later in InDesign. Back inside of InDesign, I want to show you that this top section is made up of two frames. Here we have the image, and then this frame is filled with a black color. But if we look at the fill swatch, we can see that the black is a 100% black. So the black for this frame is different than the background color for this image. In order for us to illustrate that further, I'm going to come up to the Preferences menu, and in the Preferences menu, I'm going to choose Appearance of Black. In the dialog box, I'm going to switch the on-screen menu to read Display All Blacks accurately. Then I can come down and click OK, and I can clearly see the differences between the black colors. So how do we fix this? Well, what I'm going to do is create a new swatch in the Swatches panel by coming up to the top right-hand corner and choosing New Color Swatch. I'm going to go ahead and name this Rich Black so it's easy to identify later on. Then I'm going to plug in the values that I wrote down from Photoshop and enter them here. Once I'm done entering the values, I'll click OK, and you can see the new swatch. All I have to do is select this frame, and then click the Rich Black swatch, and you'll notice that the blacks match. To make the art print consistently on press, we have to make sure that the document color profile is set correctly, and we can do that by coming up to the Edit menu, and from the Edit menu, we're going to choose Color Settings. This will open up the Color Settings dialog box, and we want to make sure that the CMYK profile is set correctly based upon the recommendations of our printer. So in this case, I want US Sheet Fed Coated V2. Then I can click OK. Finally, it's best to save the file as a PDF for handoff to the printer. We can do that by coming up to the File menu, and from the File menu, we can choose Export. This will open up the Export dialog box. I'll save it on the desktop, and the format will be Adobe PDF Print. Once you click Save, another dialog box will open, and you want to set the Adobe PDF preset to PDF X4. Finally, I can come down and click Export, and the document is ready for print. If you have larger display type that's black as well, you'll want to make sure that it too is the same rich black color so you get consistency within the document when printing. If you have smaller type, like the type down here that's 18 points or smaller, it's best to leave it at 100% black and not a rich black, as rich black may make the text look blurry when printing. Based on this example, I hope you have a better understanding of rich blacks compared to 100% blacks and how to best prepare your file for print.
One of the easiest ways to control the order of objects that are exported from InDesign is to flow all of the text into frames and anchor all images within the text. This forces the InDesign content to export in the proper order. That being said, sometimes it's not feasible to flow all of your content together into one story. Maybe the text is not related, or it just doesn't work. Does that mean you're out of luck? Not a chance. Let's take a look at the solution. I'm beginning this video with the articles.indd file already open on my computer. And I just want to show you that this is a typical InDesign document with content that we want to export to an EPUB. Now, I also want to point out that all of our text is not linked together. Some of it is because it's related. But you'll notice that not all of the text within all of these frames is linked together. So let's go ahead and export this document to an EPUB to see what we get. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the File menu, and I'll choose Export. And in the Format drop-down menu, I'm going to choose EPUB. Now I'm going to go ahead and save mine to my Chapter 16 folder, and I'm just going to call this the Articles EPUB. And we'll go ahead and click Save. And we're going to be presented with a lot of different options inside of this dialog box. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on the options in here right now, but I do want to make sure that under the content order that you pay attention to the fact that right now, I only have one option that's available. The only thing I can do right now is export my content based on the page layout. So I'm going to leave everything else set to their defaults, and I'm just going to go ahead and export this as an EPUB. And I'll go ahead and turn on View EPUB after exporting to see what the EPUB looks like. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And when it's finished, we're going to have our resulting EPUB. Now, at first, it doesn't look too bad. And so we're going to start paging through this, and we can see that everything's kind of broken up. We'll get down to this section here. You see there's our table of contents. There's our content. Now, some of these got grouped together, but a lot of these are broken apart into their individual photos. So you can see we have a lot of pages here that have been created. So let's take a look at how to control some of this. I'm going to go ahead and close this document. We'll go back to InDesign. And so the question becomes, if we can't flow everything together, how do we get control over that? Well, we're going to use something called the Articles panel. So I'm going to go to my window menu, and I'm going to choose Articles. Now, in the Articles panel, this allows me to drag content into the Articles panel to control the order in which it's supposed to be created. So what I'm going to do here is at the bottom of the Articles panel, I'm going to click on the plus sign to create a new article. So I'm just going to go ahead and call this Travel. And I'm going to make sure that Include when exporting is chosen. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And right now, the Travel article is empty. Now, I should point out you can also create numerous articles within the Articles panel. But I'm really only going to use one for now. So I'm going to click on this main image, and I'm going to drag it and drop it onto the Articles panel. And what I really want to do is drop it right on top of Travel, and you'll see that that object is now the first item under Travel. Now, I should also point out now that only items in the Articles panel are going to get exported. So anything that I exclude is not going to show up in my EPUB. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this text frame, just put that underneath. Now I'm going to go to the next page. And here's a really good point. When you're creating an EPUB, page numbers have no relevance in the resulting EPUB. And that's because you have no control over what page number items are going to fall. Because the content is flowable, depending on the device size, an item can show up on many different pages depending on the device you're viewing it on. So I'm actually not even going to include any of this content. Let's go ahead and go to the next spread. Now here, I think I'll go ahead and add her. That's important to our content. And then let's go ahead and grab the line. Why not? We'll put a divider line in there. And then we'll grab our table of contents information. And all I'm really doing is grabbing this information and putting it in the order that I want it to appear. So you can see this is a group of items. I'm going to go ahead and drag that in there. And we can see that this is a group of items. We'll go ahead and grab this group first. There's another group. And this caption information is actually part of this group. So we're okay there. We have the same situation here. We'll grab this group and this group. And it's a little bit time consuming as you're doing all of this, but in the end, you're going to be able to export your content in the correct order. So I'm not going to go all the way through here, but I am going to grab some of this information. We'll go ahead and grab this image. Go ahead and grab this. And then we'll grab this frame as well. So we're not going to go all the way to the end, but what I want to show you now is that if we go to File and choose Export, and we choose PDF as our resulting file, I'm going to just put a number 1 behind this EPUB name, and we'll go ahead and save this. And the difference now is that if you look at the content order in your EPUB export options, you'll notice that same as Articles panel is now an option. So based on page layout, which is what we chose first, just looks at where the items are positioned on the page, and it starts in the upper left-hand corner, goes across, and then down. Where now that we've added content to the Articles panel, that is going to determine the order and control what gets exported. So I'm going to go ahead and export this one. And now, when we open up the EPUB, you'll notice that as I start scrolling through here, only the content that I added is actually appearing in here. One of the improvements in the latest version of InDesign is that the table of contents export has been significantly improved. So now I can click on these links and it'll jump to the correct location. And they did a lot of behind-the-scenes programming to improve this feature. But notice that I don't have all of those extraneous elements that I had before. Everything is now in a much better order, and I don't have content that I didn't select. All of the content that I chose is actually being exported, and none of the items that I did not export have been included. As you can see, it's not necessary to flow all of your text together into one long story. By utilizing the Articles panel, you gain significant control over the order that your content exports to in an EPUB file.